Goeiedag, good day, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world. Well, I've just returned from a great visit to the continent I've always called home. And of course, that is Africa, where I was educated and where I grew up. While there, I watched YouTube videos. This is in October, where so-called experts in precious metals predicted $4,000 silver per ounce and $28,000 gold per ounce and other crazy speculations. I've watched how when silver and gold hit new highs, the bullion banks on the 17th of October, which is a Friday afternoon in UK time, how they used worthless fiat money created out of fresh air to drive down the prices of real money, i.e. gold and silver. This is how crazy it is, because this is the biggest ongoing scam in the world today. Let me put the record straight. There is a complete disconnect between fiat money and precious metals, I mean gold and silver, where there is no counterparty risk. You aren't holding someone else's debt. So to attach a fiat money value like the US dollar to silver or gold, which is real money, is as fanciful as suggesting the world is flat or Elon Musk is actually a Martian. Just so you know, I'm over 70 years old and have been investing successfully in gold and silver since I was 18 years old. This is my story, not based on a so-called latter-day expert on precious metals giving their perspective, but this is based on someone who's lived with investing in silver and gold from way back in the mid-1970s. You do the math. That's over 50 years ago. I'm not a so-called self-professed expert in precious metals who has just suddenly appeared on social media. Let's make that clear. I have a long legacy in this market of real money that predates most people claiming to be experts on social media. I've also, pre-COVID, suggested to my large international audience that they invest in physical gold and physical silver. Many have, and in the last year, seen a growth of over 60% in the value of their precious metals. I'm going to show you now just some of my silver by way of bars and by way of the old silver South African crown. Okay? I'm going to play those little video clips to you now, and remember, this is only a fraction of the precious metal that I'm actually holding. Here it comes. What you're looking at is about $100,000 worth of silver, which is just part of my silver bar collection, and you'll see that these ones here are 100 ounces, and all of these are 1 kilos, and they're all from the Perth Mint. So they're actually government guaranteed, and they're real. And yes, that's me, and it's my part of my collection of silver bars. And of course I've got a few silver rounds, about 75 1 ounce silver rounds in that batch over there. So, what a wonderful investment that's been. Look at that. This is over 500 commemorative 1652 to 1952 silver South African crowns. And I've put some from one of the plastic bags on the floor there. You can see plastic bags of the same year all around it. And the balance I haven't even taken out of its particular bag. But probably the biggest number of 1652 to 1952 South African commemorative crowns you'll ever see. There's over 500 here. And I, of course, have thousands of crowns, which are today worth about 50 Australian dollars each, which is about 600 Rand each. And the same applies to half crowns, florins, shillings, sixpences, tickies, all those beautiful old silver coins. And back in the 1970s, I bought up about 20 Rands worth of half-cent pieces, a huge amount of half-cent pieces, when they were being taken out of circulation. And they're worth a lot more than their face value today. But this is what you call stacking, guys. This is what you call stacking. What makes this video relevant and different to all the so-called experts who've been out there predicting where silver and gold is going is that I'm going to take you through how the evolution of my early hobby, which was coin collecting or numismatics, innocently evolved from building a valuable collection of gold, silver and brass South African coins in my early 20s, including the Strachan & Co. coins, which is South Africa's first indigenous coinage. And I also had, for example, the 1874 Burgerspont and the Boer War 1902 Veldpont, highlighted by making a killing on the 1980 Bunker Hunt Silver Squeeze, which is when I literally made a killing. And I'm going to tell you how. This is on silver. And during that period when Bunker Hunt was trying to corner the silver market, we had the first real expose of the devious manner in which the COMEX, or LBMA, or London Bullion Metal Exchange, manipulated the price of precious metals through what is called the so-called spot market. And we'll come back to the 17th of October this year very shortly, where I'll demonstrate to you what they did. As I mentioned, I was born over 70 years ago in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. My parents moved to the Southern Highlands town of Iringa in Tanzania, where most of my early childhood was spent with a backyard backing onto Africa. Elephant and buck were common visitors in our poorly protected backyard. This was reality. As there was no organized education system in East Africa, my parents decided to send me to boarding school in South Africa in 1963. I was 7 years old, and my father got me started. He gave me a 1916 silver 25 piastre Egyptian coin that he had acquired while fighting for Britain during World War II. So what did this little Vegemite do when he got this coin and he was sitting there at boarding school and bored? Well, he noticed that it wasn't really clean. So he got out the silver and he started polishing this coin to buggery. Still have that coin. Worthless because I polished it. But it reflects my life. When you come to how it brought me into this whole realization about the importance of having real money and not the bullshit fiat money system that you'll be using in your banking account today. Following Nixon, this is President Nixon in the US, 1971 decree that took the US dollar off the gold standard and the bunker hunt fiasco in 1970-1980, where the COMEX and LBMA, controlled by bullion banks run by brokers working for banking titans like JP Morgan and Bank of America, used worthless fiat money that was printed out of fresh air to suppress real wealth reflected by gold and silver. So let's get into this. Okay, when I first started collecting in the 1970s, silver and gold really were about par value on the money that they were represented by in coins. So when I first started working at Barclays Bank at Greytown in 1974, where my old Egyptian coin became the foundation of my interest in numismatics, this is where it all began. It was here that I approached all the bank tellers and asked them to put aside any old silver coinage that came across their counter, as I would buy it at face value. The tellers happily complied, and over several years while working for Barclays Bank at Greytown, Barclays Bank in Kopo, and in Escort, I accumulated a large canvas bag full of silver coins, from the crown or the 5 shilling to the tikkie or the threepence. Any coins of numismatic value were immediately placed in my coin books, where I had the tikkies, sixpences and so on, which had real numismatic value. After being moved from Greytown to Ikopo in southern KwaZulu-Natal, I was given the job of running the Umzimkhulu Bank Agency 5 days a week. It was here that I met Ken Strachan, the owner of a large network of over 20 trading stores right across the Transkei, the land of the Griqua, which was first basically settled under their leader Adam Koch III. Ken, a large, balding, red-headed descendant of a pioneering Scottish family, appeared minutes after the opening of my first day at the bank agency. By the time he arrived there was a large queue of about 20 Africans wanting to withdraw money from their bank accounts. Undeterred, Ken just simply walked to the front of the queue and dumped a large bag of money on the counter in front of me. Unlike those in the queue, I had no idea who he was, so asked him to join the back of the growing queue. Without a word he complied, and immediately there was a minor uproar amongst those waiting, from giggles to astonishment that I had just sent the richest man in the Transkei to the back of the bank queue. When Ken got to the front, he apologized and said he should have realized that times had changed in the new South Africa, and that he would send one of his staff in future to do the banking. When I realized who he was, I then asked Ken if he ever came across any of the old silver coins, because I would happily buy them off him. What Ken said next changed my life. Ken said that he had something far more interesting than that: the old token coins that were first issued by his grandfather in 1874 and used by the people across that region for over 60 years as circulating money. He invited me to visit his store in Umzimkhulu on a Wednesday afternoon when banks closed back then, and to look at the tins of old brass tokens that he had stored there. I jumped at the opportunity, and Ken took me to his store's safe, which had rows of large black metal containers, each holding several hundred of the old Strachan & Co. token coins. These had been recovered from circulation in the early 1930s, when their use as private money was outlawed by the government. With Ken's blessing, I took several of these metal containers home with me every week and carefully documented the 16 tokens that made up a complete set. The task took over 6 months, and at the end I documented over 20,000 of South Africa's first widely circulating indigenous currency. That's what a numismatist did back then. So, to cut a long story short, at the next meeting of the Pietermaritzburg Numismatic Society, I presented a few of the Strachan & Co. tokens that I'd saved to the assembled collectors and to Dr. Clive Graham, a professor at the University of Natal. The late Clive Graham asked me if we could work on publishing a comprehensive booklet on the tokens, and I said, I'd love to. Shortly after the publication of Kenjle, the Trade Tokens of Strachan & Company, the history of South Africa's oldest widely circulating indigenous coinage, co-authored by myself and Dr. Clive Graham in 1978. Shortly after that, I met by invitation with the late Dr. Frank Mitchell. But before I talk about my meeting with Dr. Frank Mitchell, here is the cover of the book, Kench, the Trade Tokens of Strachan & Company. There are only about 100 copies of this in the world, and there you can actually see the original Strachan family who launched the tokens back in 1874. So, let's continue. All right, I met Dr. Frank Mitchell, who most numismatists consider to be the father of South African numismatics, and I met him at his home in Cape Town. This was in the late 1970s. Frank opened up his home to me and his huge safe, and the first thing he got into his fingers was an old, uncirculated 1931 tikkie. He then confessed to me that this was basically the epitome of his numismatic life, finding that particular coin. And he explained to me how way back then, this is in the early 1930s, he used to buy a huge bag full of old coins, which he would then individually examine, hoping to discover a rare find. And often he did. But the 1931 uncirculated tikkie, that was far more valuable than the proof 1931 tikkie he handed me, was basically his greatest find right through his whole life. He handed me that 1931 tikkie, and I held it between my fingers. And I will never forget that. 1931 was during the Depression, the Great Depression. And the South African Mint only issued 128 of those tikkies that year, half of which went into proof sets. It was Dr. Mitchell who coined the phrase, "Every time I hold an old coin, I'm drawn by its unique history, reflected by the thousands of people who potentially have, at one time or another, owned it. Potentially prime ministers, murderers, billionaires, and the destitute. Every coin you hold has its own unique, untold history." And that's what numismatists love about them. Most valuations in coin books of coins covering the silver era post-1971 now refer to what's called PMV. P for Peter, M for Michael, V for value. And PMV stands for precious metal value, meaning that the value of the silver or gold is often higher than the collectible value. And this simple reality has pretty well destroyed the whole idea of numismatics around the world. You find today that a large number of increasingly rare coins are being sold for scrap, as they call it, melted down for their silver, which is worth more than their numismatic value. This is the tragedy, but the irony of what's happening today. Now, this was not the case pre-Bunker Hunt's failed attempt in 1979 to 1980 to corner the silver market. And as I mentioned earlier, the big bullion banks actually changed or rewrote the rules at that time to make his attempt to control the silver market fail. And that's what has been going on with these big bullion banks ever since. Manipulation and distortion and suppression of the real value of silver and gold. But the wheels will come off in the future, and I'll talk about that in a second. The reality of a fast rise in silver and gold price was a death knell for the numismatist, whose hobby was the labor of finding coins of extreme rarity, like the Veldpond or a set of South Africa's first indigenous coinage, the Strachan & Co. coins or tokens that circulated in Transkei south of Durban. In the beginning of this video, I referred to Bunker Hunt and the 1980 silver squeeze. This is how I, as one of the pioneering silver stackers, benefited from this event. In early January 1980, I contacted the silver broker I had been talking to in Johannesburg for several months as the price of silver shot up to about $50 US dollars per ounce, and told him I was ready to sell the large bag of silver I had accumulated from bank tellers over several years. The broker almost jumped down the phone, offering me 50 times face value, which equated to about 10,000 rand. Back then, when the rand was stronger than the US dollar, that was a lot of money, seeing that as a bank clerk, I was earning about 100 rand per month back then. When the money came through, I bought a 50-acre farm at Champagne Castle for 10,000 rand and established a small caravan on the property. Let me show you a photo of exactly where my farm was in the Drakensberg at Champagne Castle. Here we go. Two years later, after getting married and establishing a home in Rantendal in Krugersdorp, South Africa, I sold the farm for 20,000 rand, i.e. 100% profit, and left my life in KwaZulu-Natal behind for the city lights in Johannesburg, shortly before migrating to Australia in 1986. Now, just to give you an idea of how fiat money has debased or lost its value since 1980, which is not even 50 years ago. In 2023, I revisited the property which I had owned at Champagne Castle, which now has a hotel on it. And if you wanted to stay in that hotel for 2 nights, guess how much it costs you? 10,000 rand. Just over 40 years after buying the property for 10,000 rand, fiat money had devalued so much that the property was now only worth a couple of nights' stay at the local hotel. Isn't that incredible? Inadvertently, without even realizing it, before silver or gold stacking became vogue, I had been one of the first beneficiaries of this evolving strategy. Since the 1980s, I have continued to build a large collection of South African silver and gold coins, as well as bars of different sizes. For example, I have over 500 of the beautiful commemorative 1952 silver South African crowns, which celebrate the 300th anniversary of Jan van Riebeeck landing in the Cape to establish the first white settlement for the Dutch East India Company. This is over 500 commemorative 1652 to 1952 silver South African crowns, and I've put some from one of the plastic bags on the floor there. You can see plastic bags of the same year all around it, and the balance I haven't even taken out of its particular bag, but it's probably the biggest number of 1652 to 1952 South African commemorative crowns you'll ever see. There's over 500 here, and I of course have thousands of crowns which are today worth about 50 Australian dollars each, which is about 600 rand each, and the same applies to half crowns, florins, shillings, sixpences, tickies, all those beautiful old silver coins. These coins today sell for 50 Australian dollars each on eBay, which is over 100 times their value back in 1952. Think about it, 100 times their value just because of the silver, and because that is real money with no counterparty risk. For new stackers, you have to thank the totally corrupted COMEX LBMA spot silver and gold pricing system that you can buy in to these precious metals at such a cheap price, even today. In fact, this month, following the fall in the price of gold and silver, I've added to my 3,000 ounces of silver with a further 25 1-ounce silver rounds. Let me show you. So the reason I have built such a diverse range of silver and gold is because when fiat money collapses, which it will, a silver tikkie will buy me a basket full of groceries. That's a gram of silver, just a gram of silver in a tikkie, or a threepenny piece. Whereas a silver crown will buy me a month's supply of groceries. That's worth, in today's terms, about 50 Australian dollars, but it's actually worth a lot more. As I've mentioned earlier, the silver and gold prices are being suppressed by the bullion banks at the COMEX and the LBMA. So let's continue. How then will you exchange a gold 1-ounce bar post fiat money when it collapses? A 1-ounce gold bar in the future will buy you a house. You'll walk up to someone, they'll be so desperate for real money, precious metals, that they will sell you their house in exchange for a 1-ounce gold bar. And I'm not talking about this hypothetically. This actually happened in the 1920s, not long after the First World War, when Germans were starving and the Weimar Republic, the currency collapsed, rather like the Zim dollar, and what went on in Venezuela and other countries. Fiat money always collapses. And when it collapsed, you could buy a house in Germany for 1 ounce of gold. Think about it. The COMEX LBMA scam, using the fraudulent Ponzi fiat money to determine the value of real money, is a complete scam. And I'm going to talk about that now. Okay, let's turn our clocks back a bit. At about 3:30 a.m. New York time on Friday the 17th of October 2025, I was actually in South Africa at the time. I was in South Africa most of October this year. I watched as the bullion banks in London, this was late afternoon, just before they closed, the bullion banks in London, supported by JP Morgan and the Bank of America, big time, used worthless fiat money to collapse the exploding price of physical silver and gold. Let's have a look at this chart and you'll see what I'm talking about. It's not rocket science. Now remember, they did this at the very time most traders had gone home or they were still fast asleep in New York. So they did this at the worst possible time. Let me show you a chart. While I was absolutely annoyed or pissed off or whatever you like to call it, I also smiled as a long-term stacker. I knew that the fabricated price correction would correct in months to come, and that I was a precious metal stacker, not an investor. Investors have a very different perspective. It's a very different kettle of fish. They have no interest in prepping or securing their financial future outside the fiat money Ponzi scheme. And if they can make a quick quid over a couple of hours, they'll do it. Whereas stackers sit on their silver and gold, not worrying about the day-to-day variations, knowing that when fiat collapses, they're going to be in a very, very good place. Now, I want you to think about the logic of this, okay? Think carefully. Why would a bank or why would a trader sell short on silver and gold at the very time New York, the main market, is asleep, knowing that their obscene use of worthless fiat money at that time would result in a predictable collapse in the precious metal markets? Ask yourself this simple question. Would you try to sell coffee in a trendy market on a Thursday when the clientele only come over the weekend? Would you? I doubt it. So, that's basically what the bullion banks did on Friday, October the 17th. And of course, later that day, the markets closed for the weekend, which gave people who had invested in silver and gold in recent weeks the whole weekend to think about how much money they had lost because they bought in at the last moment, which led to the compounding impact of shorting the silver and gold prices. The whole thing was a scam. It was a scam. Just hours before the crash of silver and gold, artificial intelligence was used in a video, which I will play you a clip of in a second, that has since been removed by YouTube, suggesting that gold and silver would crash to very low values.
Rather than speculation, overbought conditions occur when an asset's price rises faster than its underlying fundamentals would justify, creating a situation where a correction becomes almost inevitable. In the case of gold and silver, momentum had pushed prices to levels that reflected heightened expectations rather than steady, long-term demand. When prices reach such extremes, technical indicators often signal a pullback, and investors respond accordingly.
The AI-generated figure was Warren Buffett, one of the Wall Street's wealthiest investors. And of course, it wasn't actually Warren Buffett speaking. It was his voice, but it was AI. And I will just confirm what I'm saying. So who was behind this fabricated video by Warren Buffett just hours before the pre-planned collapse of the silver and gold precious markets? Well, here is a video exposing the scam and talking about how artificial intelligence was used. Let's listen to that.
Online, identical deepfake videos claiming to be Warren Buffett are flooding platforms, all delivering the same urgent message: you got to get out of gold. But none of it is real. They're all AI generated, and yet some investors are now falling for them. So who's behind this coordinated attack, and why now? Well, gold's been under pressure, yet it's refusing to collapse, holding key levels while stocks, bonds, and crypto swing wildly. So is this market noise, or a coordinated signal. Here to break all this down for us, please welcome back to the show Todd Bubba Horwitz.
For the uninitiated, you have to understand that the entire banking industry is as corrupt and profit-driven as a souped-up member of the British royal family. And I would use Mr. Andrew Mountbatten, I think they call him now. He's lost his royal title of prince, but that kind of epitomizes how completely corrupted the banking industry is. So, what about Bitcoin? You know, when they talk about gold and silver now, people often talk about Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a completely different kettle of fish. It's a scam. It's bullshit. That's my perspective, and I stick to it. Without doubt, the biggest scam in the world today is crypto. Whether you're a Bitcoin, Ethereum, Doge, or whatever altcoin you collect, there is one simple reality. The hype might make it sound good until you are hacked. You lose your password, or worse still, the internet or your access to it is halted. Let's consider the situation where the electricity goes down. If there's a world war, that little piece of code is hidden to you and you can do diddly squat with it. Whereas if you have gold and silver in your hand, you can do stuff. I feel very sorry for the so-called crypto millionaires because their castles of wealth are built on the proverbial foundation of sand, nothing tangible, and regardless of how Bitcoin performs in the short term, within 10 years, the crypto scam, like so many others, will only be remembered by those who lost everything pursuing a mindless dream that has no foundation. And isn't it interesting how the Trump family are really pushing for crypto for their own personal interests, financial interests? The video that follows exemplifies how crypto crap is being force-fed by the fake mainstream media today. And you'll notice how Donald Trump and his sons are right in on this, making mega bucks on something that is a scam.
Donald Trump, the businessman, was famous for property development such as this in New York. But an extraordinary meeting here in May 2024 began a dramatic change. For years, he'd been a crypto skeptic. But after that meeting with the powerful crypto lobby began the conversion of Donald Trump.
Join me live on Twitter Spaces at 8 p.m. this September 16th for the launch of World Liberty Financial. We're embracing the future with crypto and leaving the slow and outdated big banks behind.
Just 7 weeks before the presidential election, Trump and his sons launched a new platform, World Liberty Financial. Their business partners included Trump confidant and now special envoy Steve Witkoff and his sons. Donald Trump was the face of the publicity campaign and was listed on the so-called gold paper as its chief crypto advocate. At that time, World Liberty Financial allowed people to invest through selling a token. 75% of the profit from each sale went to the Trump family. End of May. And outside Donald Trump's golf club in Virginia, a protest has formed.
Tonight, behind these gates, Donald Trump is cashing in on the presidency in our democracy once again.
Son is a crypto billionaire, also known for buying a piece of conceptual art, a banana gaffer taped to a wall, for $6.2 million and then eating it. At the time of the dinner, Justin's son held around $22 million worth of the meme coin. He'd also made 2 investments in World Liberty Financial, totaling $75 million. His first just 3 weeks after Trump won the presidential election. The second, the day before his inauguration. The World Liberty Financial transactions alone delivered close to $50 million to the Trump family. Allegations of inappropriate conduct against President Trump have grown, but so too have the barriers to asking him a question. Access to presidential press conferences is limited to a small pool of reporters. This group used to be selected by an association of journalists. Now the Trump administration controls who's in and who's not.
TV, correspondents, and print reporters.
Those not in the official pool have to try their luck outside on the White House lawn when the president makes the short walk to or from the Marine One helicopter.
We've come here as part of this Four Corners investigation into President Trump and his family's money. We want to ask him a couple of very important questions. Firstly, how much wealthier is he now than when he was re-elected here 7 months ago? And how appropriate is it that the president is involved in so much business activity while in office? President Trump, we want to ask you about your business activities.
It was the end of a long day, and the president was not taking any questions.
The government of UAE, through a company called MGX, agreed to put $2 billion into the Trump family's World Liberty Financial, money that it was transferring to Binance, the cryptocurrency exchange.
Sheikh Taknoon is the chair of MGX. The $2 billion investment in the Binance crypto exchange was made using a stable coin minted by the Trump-related World Liberty Financial. Stablecoins are a type of crypto that is pegged to real-world assets like the US dollar. For the Trump family, the transaction offered the possibility of lucrative returns from interest earned on the stablecoin reserves.
It's tens of millions of dollars that is effectively been going into the pockets of the Trump and Witkoff families and their business partners from that single transactions from the United Arab Emirates.
2 weeks after the $2 billion transaction, President Trump traveled to the UAE for an official visit.
Yesterday, the two countries also agreed to create a path for UAE to buy some of the world's most advanced AI semiconductors from American companies, a very big contract.
The US then announced it would allow the UAE to buy hundreds of thousands of NVIDIA's advanced AI chips. While there's no evidence that one deal was explicitly offered in return for the other, the timing is extraordinary.
Of course, the assertion was that they were not related and that they were coincidental, but they involved the same government officials and the same families that were benefiting.
What does all this mean for US foreign policy?
I think the problem is it creates questions about what is driving US foreign policy. This is a country that has spent decades trying to build a reputation globally that integrity in governance matters.
It's outrageous. It's absolutely outrageous, and the American people should be horrified that this is going on.
We're doing projects in Jeddah, we're doing projects in Oman, we're doing projects in Riyadh, we're doing projects all over.
The Trump Organization, the family's long-standing holding company now managed by the president's sons, has been expanding its portfolio.
We're doing projects all over the region. I'm doing a big hotel in Dubai as we speak. We're about to do one here in Abu Dhabi, which we're super excited about.
Since Donald Trump was re-elected, the Trump Organization has confirmed 10 new foreign developments.
The way that the Trump family's real estate ventures are growing currently is mostly through branding deals, where they sell their name and then other real estate developers put up the money to actually build them, and Trump's help promote them. And sometimes if it involves a hotel or a golf course, they will be managed the hotel and the golf course, and they'll be paid fees for that.
If there are no quid pro quo deals, the president's business activities fit within a broader definition of corruption, one in line with that used by both the World Bank and Transparency International.
The classical definition of corruption is the exploitation of public office and public power for private gain. So when you look at the Qatari plane, the $2 billion World Liberty Financial investment in his, where he has a stake in the crypto industry, the auctioning off access to those who purchase his meme coin, they're all about Donald Trump using his office, the official nature of the presidency, public office, for his private gain instead of for serving the public interest.
Corruption. If there are no quid pro quo deals, the president's business activities fit within a broader definition of corruption, one in line with that used by both the World Bank and Transparency International.
The classical definition of corruption is the exploitation of public office and public power for private gain. So
Mr. President Trump, you're generally regarded to be the wealthiest man who's ever occupied the White House.
Hope so.
How much wealthier are you now than when you returned to the White House?
Well, I don't know the deals I made for the most part, other than what my kids are doing. You know, they're running my business. But most of the deals that I've made were made before. And that's what I've done for a life. I built buildings. Like I'm building a building here. You know where I'm building? You know what? You see that area? Yeah. That is going to be the greatest ballroom anywhere in the world. And for 150, so it gives me pleasure to do it for the country.
Then is it appropriate, President Trump, that a president in office should be engaged in so much business activity?
I'm really not. My kids are running the business.
But you are also...
You know what the activity... Where are you from?
I'm from the Australian Broadcasting Corporation Four Corners program.
Australia's... You're hurting Australia, right? In my opinion, you are hurting Australia very much right now. They want to get along with me. You know, your leader is coming over to see me very soon. I'm going to tell him about you. You set a very bad tone.
Well,
go ahead,
President Trump, when the UAE does a deal like that, when the UAE does a deal, what does it want in return?
Quiet.
Mr. President, what are you hearing about the operation?
What would you do if he said, I'm going to sue you for calling me corrupt?
bring it on.
You'd fight him in court.
I'm ready. I will look forward to the discovery of all of these issues that constitute his abuse of public power for personal gain.
These are genuinely dangerous times for the United States. American institutions are under pressure. Many Americans fear that democracy itself is being threatened. With a bitterly divided country and growing concerns from both the left and the right that there may be a breakdown of social cohesion, it's even more important than ever that Americans and their allies can trust implicitly in the accountability, transparency, and integrity of the highest office in the land.
So, where to now? Well, simple. Don't listen or be misled by the so-called experts predicting whatever price on physical silver or gold is going to be. Just know that the metal is in itself the value with no counterparty risk. Nothing, crypto, Bitcoin or fiat money can offer you that security. It is not rocket science. Let me ask you this question. Would you discard your tin cans of prep food because grocery prices, which is unlikely, reduced on these items? In other words, the price of, let's say, a can of baked beans went down. Would you discard all your other cans? No, of course you wouldn't, because you're a prepper. There are so many other prepping examples I could give you, but for now, that will suffice. So, simple question. Why would you sell your silver and gold stack, your financial future security, totally unrelated to the fiat Ponzi scheme? Why would you sacrifice that because the prices of these precious metals have risen so much this year, or because there was a fraudulent correction on them in October 2025 using unlimited bank-created fiat money through the archaic LBMA corrupt COMEX system to keep the US dollar value of gold and silver down for the benefit of the Ponzi banking system? My strategy is quite simple. I have a huge amount of old silver, as I've shown you. The intrinsic value has nothing to do with fiat money. Nothing. Totally unrelated. I don't care what the COMEX LBMA do in establishing a spot price, as it's all smoke and mirrors and bullshit. In fact, when they do push the price down, that's when I jump in and buy some more. Thank you. Because I know they're a con. So, how can you manipulate the value of real money, that's gold and silver, with bullshit fiat money, which is really simply someone else's debt? Houston, those who believe in paper fiat money have a problem. They have a problem because there's no integrity in the system. Not one piece of my collection of physical silver and gold has any counterparty risk. It is real money. In closing, let me just say, physical silver and gold has been real money for thousands of years. Many other forms of money have come and gone during that time. None have survived. In particular, every fiat money ever established has fallen on itself like a pack of cards because its whole basis is a Ponzi scheme. Consider the Zim dollar, the German mark under Weimar, Venezuela, the Roman coinage, and I can go on and on and on and on. Live the lie with fiat debt-based money or own physical silver and gold with no counterparty risk. The two are as different as men are from women. It's that simple. Please remember to register on lovinglifetv.com to be kept informed. And just for the record, I am starting a new YouTube channel in the near future. It'll just have a few videos going up which cover my trip to South Africa, and I'll put a link below it under this video in due course once it's up. And it'll talk about the hotels I stayed at, what I got up to in South Africa. There's some very interesting developments there, by the way, and a lot more. All right, guys, take care. Bye for now.